This is John. John was recently named top salesman at Widgets R Us. In his spare time, John's a geek. He's a real geek. He plays war games at weekends and writes programs for computers for fun. John's also got something else up his sleeve. He's thinking of starting his own business. John takes the plunge and quits his job to work for himself. He decides to write a smartphone app and, using his programming skills, makes a pretty good job of it. He even splashes out on a fancy marketing campaign. But when he submits his software to the app shop, it gets rejected. With all his savings spent in marketing, John's forced to return to his old job. So, what do you think John should have done? John quits his job and sets up on his own, even taking a lot of his old clients with him. Early sales figures are great, but John soon gets bored. He's not interested in selling widgets anymore. John struggles to motivate himself and eventually gives up. If this is what working for yourself is like, then John's not interested. John quits Widgets R Us and gets straight to work as a self-employed programmer. He loves not selling widgets, but there's something missing. Customers. Without any clients to write software for, John soon gets addicted to the game Third Life and abandons his real life. John stays at Widgets R Us, but thinks hard about what he's good at and what he isn't. John reckons he could use his programming skills to write software for smartphones, so starts an evening course in writing apps. He also spends time reading the terms and conditions for the app shop, just so he doesn't get caught out there. John's programming skills improve rapidly, and he's now even more determined to turn his hobby into a career. One evening, John comes up with an app idea that he's convinced can't fail. After doing a quick online search to check no one else has already thought of it, he starts writing the software. John spends months and lots of money making sure his app's perfect. Unfortunately, by the time the software is ready, there are already 12 other apps on sale that do exactly the same thing. And now, John has no money and no income. So what do you think John should have done? John shares a few of his best app ideas with family and friends. He then starts work on the idea that they all say they like the most. John manages to sell a few downloads of his game, Furious Chickens. But it turns out there's already an app that's very similar which is already on the market, so he fails to make any profit. John gets to work on his new idea immediately. The sooner he starts writing the software, the sooner he'll start earning some money. But in his haste, John ends up writing an app that no one actually wants. He doesn't even sell one download. John does some research and it seems to pay off. He manages to find an untapped niche in the app market. He carries out more research into his ideas, and people who aren't even his friends seem genuinely keen to buy it. Confident he's got the perfect idea this time, John's about to start writing the software. But then his friend Lara, who runs her own business, says he should think about writing a business plan. Lara lends John a copy of her business plan to help get him started. He's not really sure what to include in his own plan, but John knows it's important to have one. So he copies Lara's and then files his new business plan away. But without any clear goals to work to, John ends up spending too much time programming and not enough time finding customers. And with no customers, he goes out of business. So what do you think John should have done? John's business idea is pretty simple and he's already got enough savings to get started. So rather than waste time on a business plan, he starts writing software straight away. He's doing really well. But it turns out there were lots of things he hadn't thought of. A small problem becomes a big one, and without any contingency plan, John runs out of money. John knows how important business plans are, so he's already got one. He wrote it 6 months ago when he was planning to sell widgets. But when John shows his business plan to the bank to persuade them to lend him some money, they refuse, telling him it's out of date and no longer relevant. John puts everything on hold and starts writing a business plan from scratch. His new plan is so convincing that it even helps him persuade a business angel to invest in his app creation business. With financial backing, John can give up selling widgets and work in his programming full-time. With a business plan and an investor on board, the future's looking good. But John realizes he still doesn't have a name for his new business. He gives it some thought and decides to call his firm Mandroid Games, as he thinks this will help tell potential customers what he actually makes. But he's soon forced to rethink the name when he starts getting threatening letters from Google for infringing their trademark. So what do you think John should call his business? John starts trading under the name Gold Games. It sounds appropriate as he specialises in recreating classic console games for mobile phones. But it turns out the 2 words he's chosen have been protected by the British Olympic Committee, banning anyone from using them in their business name without permission. Unfortunately, John didn't get permission, so he's now faced with an unwelcome fine. John registers Portable Apps as his company's name. Unfortunately, he then discovers the web domain he needs is already taken. As he can't use the internet to attract new customers, John struggles and never gets his business off the ground. John registers Amazing Apps as a company name and registers it as a web domain too. The name's easy to remember, so he gets lots of repeat orders. He also finds he gets lots of work from people typing Amazing Apps into search engines and stumbling across his business that way. If you start a business, you'll have to make lots of important decisions. Deciding the best course and making the best decision can be tough. Sometimes it can take weeks or even months to find out if you've made a good choice. Doing lots of planning and research and taking your time when making key decisions will give you the best chance of making the right decisions for you and your business.